So what are we doing today? Well, before we get cutting some trees down and cut some branches that fell off trees due to the latest storm, I thought I'd tell you about a few things that you absolutely need to know about a chainsaw. So sometimes in the ad you'll read like 18-inch chainsaws, 20-inch chainsaws. Well, they're measuring it on the bar length. So this is an 18-inch bar, and it's an old bar. I just keep it as a spare. And then this would be a guard, which helps reduce the dirt that gets in your actual chain. So this chain is about right. You want about a little less play than that. And in order to adjust it, you use this tool. You just flip the chainsaw on its side and you loosen the bolts. There's two of them. You just loosen them, you don't take them off. And then you stick your tool right where there's a screw, and it tightens the chainsaw blade. So that's tight enough right there. And then you tighten up your bolts. So there's two fluids that the saw needs to operate on. One is chain oil, which lubricates the chain as it spins around the bar. And the easiest way to get it off is kind of just put your tool in there like that and use it as a lever. And mine needs a little bit more. So generally, I carry a bucket with me, and it has rags, that tool, and bar oil in it. And if I think I'm going to do a lot of chainsawing, I'll carry my gasoline, which requires to be mixed with this. This is a 50-in-1 oil. So it tells you right on the back like how many gallons per one of these little containers. So if you don't have the actual gas container, you should try to get exactly a gallon one. If not, you're gonna have to pre-measure it so you get the right measurement without having to guess too much. So you have to have this as well for the gasoline. So I guess I lied. There's three fluids you need. Gasoline with the right 2-cycle engine oil in it, gasoline, and chain oil. So usually the chain oils are located at the front of the saw, and you just fill it up. Try not to overfill, but it always seems like you overfill, like I just did. But no problem. It's dripping down on the chain that it's gonna drip on anyway. So I'll just clean up that excess, not to make a gooey mess here. That's why you have the rags. All right, so then if you need gasoline, you go ahead and put your screwdriver side. There's a little slot here, and you open this up. This gasoline's already been pre-mixed, and I keep it in a separate container away from everything else so I don't get confused. They make special nozzles so you can get the gas inside your chainsaw, but if you buy an aftermarket nozzle, because those Echo nozzles don't work very well, get something where you can bend it into it. That way you're not wasting or spilling your gasoline. So now that you know that your blade's the right tightness, and you have oil and fuel in your chainsaw, you flip it on with this switch here, and you pull the choke out, which is located right here. And some people can pick up their chainsaw and push down and pull and start it. I can't do it. I never learned that. So I stick my foot in here. It's better with boots. And I pull. Okay, so once it kind of does that, you take your choke and you put it in half. And it should start. So as far as safety equipment goes, above all, wear protection like sunglasses. You saw in the one example that when I was sawing, or you'll see in the next example of me sawing, beginning to saw a tree down, I'm cutting the wedge, that I was wearing a hard hat. That's because the tree was dead already for a couple of years, well, a year, and it still had branches above me, and sometimes they can fall down. Now, it's still gonna hurt, but at least it won't crack your head open. So on some of my other standing timber, all the branches are gone, so it's just a matter of, not getting hit by the trunk of the tree. So, and then hearing protection as well. So there's like 3 things you need. And I mean, if there's already branches on the ground, you can get away with not wearing a hard hat and even hearing protection, but I wouldn't go without eye protection at all. You only have one set of eyes, and they're really hard to repair. So above all that, but you don't want to go deaf either. So that would be a good thing to have as well. So I always carry a bucket, and I have rags, some oil that I transfer from this large one, so when I'm further out away from the garage, I can get to it, and my tool. And sometimes I carry an extra chain as well if it starts getting dull. And you can tell if a chain's getting dull is not only is it not cutting as well, it takes longer, but the chips themselves are smaller. They look like sawdust rather than like mulch. You want like bigger chips. That proves by a visual look as to how sharp your chain is. So just another note, if you're trying to purchase a chain for your chainsaw, it gets a little tricky, especially if you're ordering online. So there's a lot of 18-inch chainsaws out there, but the tooth size and other dimensions are different. So you definitely really want to get the same exact dimensions, otherwise it won't work on your chainsaw. So whatever is made for your chainsaw, that's what you get. So mine's I always forget the dimensions, but if I see it, I kind of go, oh yeah, that's it. But there's like 3 dimensions, but it's above all, it's inches, number of teeth, and there's like 3/8 or 7/16. There's another measurement in there. So you just want to make sure you get the right one for the right chainsaw. I like Echo. Everybody talks about Stihl, but I bought a Stihl like easy pull, and you don't like pull like as a jerky motion, you pull slowly. But it had a major problem with it. I only used it 3 times. I had to take it back to the shop twice, and I traded in for an Echo, and I've never had a problem with this. I mean, I've worn through some parts, but this is an 8-year-old chainsaw, and the reason I did that is that it has parts and labor, which like labor is that's a really good warranty that they pay for if your chainsaw needs it before 5 years is up. Now this chainsaw is 8 years old, and I think I've changed the sprocket and the bar, and the regular tune-up like a spark plug. It cleaned out the air filter. That's about it, and that's pretty good. I mean, because I use this thing all the time. I mean, it's winter, summer, fall, spring. I'm using it all the time. I don't even have to put like an ethanol additive to my gasoline to preserve it, or even run my chainsaw dry, because I'm using it so often that I don't need to store it. But if you do, you should probably run your chainsaw dry, or at least preferably put gas that has no ethanol at all in it, and it's sold at a premium, but it's worth it because, I mean, you buy the additive to undo the ethanol, so what's the point? You're spending money either way. But if you don't use it that much, certainly pull the fuel out of it. If you do use it a lot, I still prefer to use the expensive non-ethanol gas. I just think it's better for small motors. So let's see what else. There's a lot to know, a lot of which you're just gonna learn kind of firsthand by doing. They also have shaps as well, and I do have a pair. I don't wear them a lot during the summer because they're so hot, but the way they work is that I believe they're made out of Kevlar. If your blade goes into the shaft that covers you from the waist down, it will clog it up so much that it won't run, and it'll stop it from going into your flesh. So that's a really good thing to have. And they're actually a little bit expensive, but how much is your leg worth, right? So that's the basics, the absolute basics to get you started using a chainsaw. And you learn as you go. I mean, you can sharpen your own blade, and that would be a whole separate discussion. I use a Dremel. I found it the easiest. I have 5 different tools of how to sharpen a chainsaw, but the Dremel's the way I go. It's faster and everything else. But at first I didn't feel comfortable doing that. And so I paid them to sharpen my blade for $6 a run. But the blades are kind of getting expensive. And so, sharpening them is definitely almost a necessity these days. Otherwise you'd be spending like quite a bit of money. I have a lot of trees here, so it's definitely a necessity for me to sharpen the blades. And when I first started, I didn't know very much. I knew nothing really about chainsaws. And so I asked the person that had just sharpened my chain, how do I know which way it goes on the bar? And he told me, he goes, well, there's only one way it can go on. Well, I thought that meant more or less that it's either idiot proof or it doesn't matter. And it does matter. If you put it on backwards, you won't be cutting much. But some of the blades actually have a mark on it that you can memorize. Like on these teeth here, there's a small little scribed mark. So if you can remember, it goes this way or that way. And the only way I can say that makes it obvious on a sharpened blade anyway is that the more pointy side goes forward, because that's the part that's gonna cut into the wood, and they alternate back and forth, but always the sharpest part goes that way, toward the way in which the bar is rotating the chain. So that's pretty much it for today, but that should get you started. Don't be too afraid of it, but definitely be careful. So now I'm gonna get to sawing some wood, and you can observe what that all looks like. So I've stacked all the small branches in a teepee type of fashion. I had to cut the tree high, so the stump's like 3 feet tall, because there was barbed wire tied around this tree for a number of years, and I could see the indentation that the wire as it grew into the tree made. So I didn't want to hit that wire while I was trying to cut the wedge and the rest of the tree down. So you don't want surprises like that, so definitely inspect what you're cutting into. You might want to look for nails as well. So I need to burn this, and the easiest way for me, when I get a really consistent fire, is to place it in a teepee formation like that. It tends to burn faster and more directed, and especially if you're in tight quarters, like if you're in a woodlot and there's trees everywhere, if you can get like an opening where it can flame like a torch straight up without wind, of course, that's ideal. So the rest of this log I can pick up with the back hay hook, and I'm just gonna burn it straight away into a pile. I have so much wood. And then I don't know if you were able to appreciate it, but if you want 18 inches worth of firewood like I cut over here, I measured it with my chainsaw. Since my chainsaw is the bar is 18 inches long, I just kind of line it up with that. I just kind of place it on the side of the chainsaw, and that's a rough estimate of 18 inches. So I'll save these for firewood. I'll split them and save them for firewood. This is an example of a teepee fire. My intent is to have the stump burnt and burned down, even down through the roots, if the fire gets hot enough and surrounds it enough. So that's what we're doing today.